When the line to Peel Godred was completed, Eagle took the first few trains of equipment up to the power station, which allowed enough power for Harris to finally travel up the branch line. And following this, Harris would deliver the train of equipment once a week to the station. A few nights after Sadie and Sophia's joke ended, the 3 electric engines were settling into their shed when the director arrived. "Good evening, sir." "Evening, all. What brings you all the way out here, sir?" "Firstly, I'd like to thank you for your excellent job handling the power station's equipment." "Thank you, sir. Just doing my best." "Which is why I've considered your recommendation." He turned to the sisters. "I'd like you two to handle the last shipments." "Us, sir?" asked Sophia. "Yes, the other engines have all given me positive reports on your behavior these last few days." The two looked at each other with innocent expressions. "Now, there's just 3 deliveries left, but these are some of the most important loads, so they'll be a bit longer than usual." "Don't worry, sir," said Sadie. "You can count on us." "Good. Now, if you have any questions, I'm sure Harris will be delighted to answer them." And the director left. "I don't think he can count on us," Sadie admitted. "Why? It's only a bigger train. You have to take slower." "That's the thing. We've never pulled large loads. Not to mention the tunnel." "Treat them like you would any other train. But like I said, take it slower." Sadie and Sophia weren't sure. "It's not like you're delivering munitions. I mean, you wouldn't want them to topple over, but there's nothing to be afraid about." "If you say so," said Sadie, doubtfully. "Hold up," interrupted Sophia. "You've never handled munitions. How would you know what to do?" "On the contrary, when the workmen were preparing to blast the tunnel, Neil and Clive gave me a lesson on handling the material." "Oh, I see. You know, I just thought of something. If the job's not done, how are we even running?" "Simple. We're not running at full power." "That does explain why the currents are weaker than our old line." "Aye. Every time they install these units at the station, the power gets noticeably better." "Better than that generator you had when you arrived?" "Yes," laughed Harris. The 2 engines were still contemplating their job the next morning, and by noon, they were nervous after completing their morning jobs. "I don't like this." "Me neither, but there's nothing we can do now." Just then, a whistle was heard, and Eagle arrived in the yard with the equipment train. Wow. Besides the usual box fans, 4 flatbeds led the train with bulky units and other materials sitting on top of them. "You ladies have a fun task ahead of you," chuckled Eagle. He could see their worried faces. "I wouldn't threat. They're not bad once you get moving." "Easy for you to say. And Sadie, I'll push if you want to pull the train. That way, if anything happens, you can go get help." "I'd rather have an uneventful trip, but I suppose that's a good plan." Eagle was uncoupled and moved out of the way. Sadie backed up to the front, while Sophia took up the back. "Need any advice?" "It'd probably be the same thing Harris told us." "Well, good luck then." "Thank you." Harris wasn't kidding about the loads being heavy. The 2 started off and began the slow climb up the Peel Godred. They made good progress, and like Eagle said, once they were rolling, it wasn't bad. "You doing good back there?" "All good. They're heavy, all right." I can feel it too. They soon arrived at Kirkmachen and stopped for a red signal. A minute later, Harris arrived with his passengers heading down. Oh, you're doing great. I'm surprised you can handle this by yourself, Sophia replied, still trying to catch her breath. Ernest looked over from the smaller platform. You sound like me when I first climbed the mountain with a heavy load. But I thought your railway only allowed you to push one coach. Not exactly. A few days after our line opened, Francis was almost packed full. That was hard work, but once we were climbing the final ascent, we found Shane Dooney stuck where his inexperienced driver forgot to fill him with water at the last station. I knew we couldn't keep the passengers waiting, so I buffered up behind them and pushed them the rest of the way up. It was a slow climb. I questioned if I had undercalculated the weight. But I also had a duty to the passengers. And just like that, we were at the top. But we don't have passengers. Don't these turbines and other cargo provide power for you to transport passengers and provide them with goods? Yes. Then it's still a duty to the people along the branch. You've made it this far. Don't doubt yourselves. We won't. And thank you, Ernest. I'll second that advice, agreed Harris. The signal dropped, and they continued up the branch. They took Ernest's advice into consideration, and soon started crossing the viaduct, with the tunnel just a few hundred yards away. Almost there. But as soon as the last flatbed left the viaduct, its rear bogie derailed and began rolling beside the tracks, bringing the first van's front wheels with it. Stop! Stop! Yelled the guard. Sophia responded quickly, as did Sadie when she looked back. Heavens! They stopped just in time. Sadie and the first three flatbeds were all in the tunnel, with the fourth just barely meters away from the mouth. Everyone sighed as the cruising guard got down to assess the situation. Well, at least it wasn't on the same side as the contenarary poles, said Sophia's driver. Aye. What do you think is the best option? Asked the guard. I suppose Sophia's just going to have to take the rest of the vans back down to Kirkmachen. I'll stay here with these. It looks like it, replied her driver. And that's what they did. Sadie's emergency brakes were locked on, and Sophia carefully pulled the rest of the train back to the station. Coldy had also arrived at the platform, and was surprised to see her. Sophia? What's going on? And she explained what happened. I see. Is everyone all right? More startled than anything. Coldy watched Sophia's driver hurry into the station building. Good to know this wasn't a joke. Why would I joke about the line being blocked? Based on your actions last week, you're not exactly in the clears yet. I know, and we did apologize. Coley didn't say anything for a moment. When were you and Sadie built? 1916. So, you two have been in service for a decade. Have you met any engines that have had unfortunate consequences for their actions? You mean getting demoted from passengers to goods? Not exactly. I'm talking about engines that care more about themselves than those around them. Not really. There's a reason why us mountain engines, especially myself, care more about taking our jobs seriously. Sophia was left to ponder what Coldy said. Not long after, the power lines were shut off, as Edward brought the breakdown cranes up the branch line. A few hours later, the trucks were re-railed and were delivered to the power station, along with the power being turned back on. That night, the two engines returned to the sheds. Great job on preventing a disaster today. I wouldn't necessarily call it a disaster, Sophia replied. Aye, but if that turbine got damaged, you would have gotten an earful from the owner of the power station. But it wasn't our fault the flatbed derailed. I know, but Mr. Willis believes he's the only correct person. Now that you mention it, he was very ticked off about the delivery being late, despite knowing what happened, added Sadie. You think that attitude will come back to bite him? Probably, but until that day comes, we'll just have to put up with it. I guess you're right. And speaking of flatbeds, what did the investigators find? Some defect in the bogie. It was actually in line to be repaired at a workshop on the mainland and somehow got mixed up with another that had been repaired. And they were impressed we got it all the way up to the power station after the tunnel without it derailing again. Lucky it didn't then. And given your actions today, as long as you don't pull any more jokes, the director should have full trust in you again. Yeah, that ain't gonna happen. Wait, what? Nah, she's joking. You better. And he gave them a serious look. The other two looked at Harris and just smiled. A moment later, he did too. Despite their cheeky behavior, they were hard workers. And throughout the next many weeks, the girls worked hard delivering freight up and down the branch line, along with the last shipments to the power plant. For a time, it appeared they calmed down, and in good time, as the harvest season wasn't too far away.